I'm Caitlin Pugh, and my narrator today is Ashley Dennis, and today is Wednesday, October 11th, 2017. It's 1:30, and we are at the Ruth Patrick Science Education Center, and my interview assistant is Megan Martin. So, Ashley, I'd like to start off by asking where and when you were born.
I was born in a little town called Forest Lake, Minnesota. I was raised there, graduated high school there. My parents still live there. So it's actually a community called Coon Lake Beach.
I've never heard of that.
Most people haven't.
That's interesting. So what was it like growing up in Minnesota? Because I'm sure it's a lot different here than South Carolina.
It was a lot different. It was I kind of grew up in the country. So I grew up on a lake, so we spent a lot of time fishing and boating and skiing and tubing, anything having to do with the lake. In the wintertime, my dad would make a skate rink on the lake, and we would go ice skating on the lake, which was really cool. We'd go ice fishing. It was really neat growing up there. It got cold. It got really cold, but I miss it. I really do.
Sounds nice right about now with it being so hot.
Yeah, I would give anything for the cold weather right now.
So, you mentioned earlier that you grew up with two sisters.
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? Because I only have a brother. So.
Well, I was the middle child, so I kind of had it bad and good. My older sister is 2 years older than me, and my little sister is 4 years younger than me, so there's a little bit of an age gap. But we were your typical siblings. I mean, we fought. We hated each other. We loved each other. We got along. I mean, it just depended on the day, really. But now we're pretty close.
It's good because as you grow older,
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to be close.
Yeah.
So, what did you want to be when you were little?
Your typical doctor, firefighter, anything helping people. I always wanted to help people when I was younger. So, yeah.
I think that's, like you said, it's like one of the main things that everybody wants to be. Like every kid wants to say they're a doctor or a firefighter.
Yep. It was your typical everything,
So, if you wanted to do that when you were little, how did you get involved in the Navy?
9/11 happened. I was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 happened. I was actually in choir class, and the principal came over the intercom and asked all the teachers to turn on the TV so we could see what was going on. I actually firsthand saw the second airplane hit the towers. And I was 16 at that point, or almost 16. I guess I was 15 going on 16, and it kind of changed my outlook on life. I was like, wait a minute, there's something bigger than just me out there. And so I started talking to the recruiters when they would come into school, even at 15, and by the time I was 16 going on 17, I had decided that I wanted to join the military in general. Didn't know which branch yet. Talked to all the different recruiters, got my family's input. They were very adamant that I wasn't allowed to go Army or Marine Corps. So it was between the Navy and the Air Force, and the Navy just seemed to fit me better. So I decided at 17 to join the Navy.
That's amazing to make such a big life decision.
It was a big decision. My parents had to make that with me because they had to sign on the dotted line just as much as I did.
Because you were underage.
I was underage, yep. And I was a junior in high school when I signed initially, when I took my oath.
So you got to finish high school before you...
Yes. Okay. For the Navy, you have to graduate, or at least when I was in, you had to graduate and have your diploma in hand before you could go to boot camp. Okay. So I didn't go to boot camp until the summer after my senior year of high school.
Okay. That's a big change from going to high school to...
It was a big change, definitely.
So, you mentioned Navy boot camp. What is that like for someone, like a civilian who's never been on a military base?
It was culture shock. Complete and utter culture shock. I grew up in a very white area. So we didn't have a lot of different ethnicities. We were mostly white, German, or Swedish backgrounds. And so it was really my first time ever associating with people of color. And out of my recruit drill instructors, 2 of them were black. And so it was a big culture shock, learning how to properly talk to them and that kind of stuff. But then boot camp in itself, you're up early, you're up late, you march everywhere, it's hot outside, you're going to PT, you're having tests, you're having classwork. I mean, it's a very stressful environment, but it's teaching you camaraderie, it's teaching you teamwork. Everything is done as a group. It was an experience that I can never. I've yet to find anything that compares to it. It changed my life.
So you said it was hot. So where was your boot camp?
The only Navy boot camp right now is in Great Lakes, Illinois. It's near Chicago, and I went in the dead of summer. I left on July 2nd of 2003 for boot camp, so it was the dead of the summer. It was either that or go in the middle of the winter, and I chose the summer, but it was hotter than I'd ever experienced.
Yeah, it's hot enough here as it is. So when you graduated boot camp, what was just your typical day in the actual Navy like?
Well, I went straight from boot camp to my training at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. It was a 64-week program, and basically it was like going to college. I got up. The difference was we had what was called muster or roll taking. We'd get together, we'd get our orders for the day, we'd go to class, then we'd get done with class, 3:30ish, and then we'd go to PT Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then on the weekends we were kind of free. Unless we had duty, we were free to kind of do what we wanted. So it really wasn't that different from a college experience, other than the military aspect of it.
So that must have helped when you transitioned over into being a student too.
Yeah, I think it helped, and it helped that when I came back to college, my children were older, so I was in my late 20s. When I went to my first college, which was Georgia Military College in Augusta, Georgia. So I had more life experience than your typical college student would going into college.
Yeah.
No, you're fine.
So where were you stationed while you were in the Navy?
Well, I was stationed for boot camp at Great Lakes, and then for training I was at the Defense Language Institute, DLI, in Monterey, California. And then I got stationed at Fort Gordon in Augusta, Georgia. And I stayed there. I was stationed there from April of 2005, till June of 2012 when I got out of the military. I actually never deployed.
Oh, you were very lucky in that aspect.
I got very lucky. Being a linguist, it's not always necessary to deploy. We do things that are near real time. We have ways of getting the intel that we need to get that don't require us to deploy. And they, especially in the Navy, unless you're going out to a ship, they avoid deploying you when possible because you're a target.
Yeah.
Being a linguist, you really have a target on your back.
So, in your preliminary interview, you said you were with the Cyber Fleet Command mission.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you end up in that department?
It was just a department of the command, NIAC, Georgia, Navy Information Operations Command, Georgia. I can't believe I remember that. But that was the command I was in, and the Cyber Fleet Command was just what our fleet was called. Because in the Navy you have, I think it's 6 different fleets all around the world. And we were just an added fleet to that, meaning we didn't necessarily deploy. We did have people who deployed all the time. But when I came up for deployment, I actually found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So that set me back from deploying, and by the time I stopped having kids, it was time for me to get out. So I never got the chance to deploy.
So if you are pregnant and in the Navy, they will not deploy you?
No, you're considered, from 20 weeks on, you're considered a non-deployable status. So if you're on a ship when you get pregnant, at 20 weeks they have to transport you off that ship to a ground command.
So not anymore.
And then you have a year after you have your child before they can deploy you again, unless you volunteer to deploy. And my children are 18 months apart, so didn't quite hit that year before I found out I was pregnant with my son.
Wow. I just never knew that about the Navy in general. I didn't think about that, I guess.
Not many people do. Some branches you can get out when you get pregnant. The Navy doesn't do that. They keep you in. You're still held to your contract, that kind of stuff. It's just they have to modify your orders. When I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, I was actually in a deployer billet, meaning I was set to go deploy, and then they do a pregnancy test before you deploy, and that popped up positive. So then from that point until the 20 weeks gestation, I was considered what's called an ALPO. It's Assistant Leading Petty Officer of that division. So I was in charge of them. I was the assistant to the person in charge. So I ran muster, I took roll call, I told people where to go, I counseled people, that kind of stuff. So I was put in a leadership position.
So besides your leadership position in your fleet, what else did you do?
Well, I worked as an Arabic linguist, so I translated. In a nutshell, that's what it means. I was a translator. I would sit with headphones or cans, as we called them, on my head, and I'd determine if it needed to be translated, and if it did, I would translate it, and then I would send out a report, whether it be to just the command itself or to the forward deployed forces. We worked hand in hand. Our command worked hand in hand with SEAL teams. We worked with Marines, Army, deployed forward to Iraq and Afghanistan. So we had our hand directly in what was going on with the Gulf Wars.
So your job is actually really important in the whole aspect of...
Yeah, as a linguist, the stuff that you hear, and I can only say so much because I am tied by a security clearance, but the way it works is you listen in on people talking, having everyday conversations, and then if it's we figure out how to target certain terrorist cells, and then we go from there. And if, say, we have a group of Marines going on a mission and we have intel saying they know that you're coming, we can give them the heads up so that maybe they abort that mission or they go in more prepared than they would be if they weren't expecting anything.
So, yeah, I feel like that would be detrimental if we didn't have linguists like you in the military.
Considering the fact that the terrorists, I mean, that's the best example I can give. The terrorists are the bad guys.
Yeah.
They don't speak English necessarily. You have to have linguists of all languages. We have Russian linguists, German linguists, Spanish linguists, Arabic linguists, Persian, Farsi linguists. You name the language, we probably have a linguist in the military or in the civilian sector that can translate stuff for that, because we have missions that run in like Guatemala and South America and that kind of stuff. So you need linguists of all different backgrounds. So it was really a rewarding job.
Well, that's good that you liked it and you felt you were very successful in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably helped pass the time while you were...
I can say that there were times where I helped free, my work directly helped free a hostage situation. So and we got awarded for that. So we would get awarded for the good deeds that we were doing. We also had what we would call our kill roster, which meant I've killed, because of my intel, this many terrorists have been killed. Which, when you're in, that's a pretty big deal, because you'd have some people in the hundreds of people. And it's a sense of pride, because my work directly tied into this bad guy being demised. So it's kind of brutal. Morbid, maybe.
So, do you think your experience in the Navy has prepared you for everyday life, and how do you think it changed your life?
I wouldn't say it prepared me for everyday life. The transition back to civilian has been hard. There's aspects of the military that I'll never get rid of. When I raise my children, I still do military type stuff with them. It did set me up for success in the fact that I'm very motivated, I'm very driven. I take everything I do, I don't take it for granted. Going to college for me is a huge deal. I'm in my 30s, getting a degree with 2 children. I'm a single mother. I mean, without the military, I wouldn't be able to do what I do today, I don't think. So it did set me up for success in that aspect, because without that leadership abilities that I learned, the discipline that I learned, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today.
It's very important, the discipline, the motivation.
It really is. I'm of the mindset, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I'm of the mindset that we should have a mandate that everybody serve a term in the military in our country once they hit a certain age, male and female, because it was nice to take that break from school, to get that discipline, to get that leadership, to get out there on my own in the world and see what the world really was like, but with that safety net.
Yeah.
Before being thrown into it like a lot of college students are straight out of high school.
Now, aren't some countries isn't it mandatory in some countries?
Yeah, there
like
are some
Korea
countries. South Korea is one of them. I want to say Israel is another one, where it is mandatory. And they've shown to be really successful with it. They have very successful militaries, especially Israel. They have an amazing military. But it teaches camaraderie, it teaches teamwork, it teaches discipline. It's just such a good all-around experience.
Yeah, I can see that, because those things that camaraderie, the teamwork, those are things that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Like
to be successful in life, you
Yeah.
need those skills. They're life skills that everybody needs to have.
Definitely. So, do you think your views on anything have changed since you did work in the military? Like,
Yeah, I would say, looking at the future, even after what I just said about wanting, thinking it'd be smart for us to have a mandated military, I don't like the thought of my own children going in the military. Personally, the thought terrifies me, but if that's what they choose, then that's what they choose, and I will support them regardless. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Did that answer the question?
yeah,
Okay.
that was perfect.
Okay.
So your work experience in the Navy, has it transferred over into anything that you're studying now? With psychology?
As a psychology major, there's an aspect of leadership. You need to be a leader if you're sitting down with someone and counseling them and that kind of stuff, pointing them in the right direction, that kind of stuff. So in that aspect, learning the leadership skills, going through leadership training that I did when I was in the military really helped. Not only that, but it's helped me just with my everyday interactions with students. I have a student in one of my classes, one of my psychology classes actually, that she has horrible test anxiety. And I learn by teaching. So it's the perfect combination. We get together before tests and I reteach her the stuff that we've learned in class, which is cementing it in my mind, and it's also cementing it in her mind, and it really is a really good work relationship. So that's really been something that I don't think I could have done without that.
That's really good that you're helping others through your experience.
I love helping others. I've always loved helping others. It's one of the reasons why I got out of the military, because I felt like I wasn't helping anymore. Being a mom became a priority too. I was able to be a stay-at-home mom until my kids got to school age. But yeah.
So, what do you plan to do with the work experiences that you've gained besides your leadership positions? And
I decided to go away from the linguist community, from the intelligence community as a whole. I don't like doing shift work, I found out.
I don't think anybody does.
I don't think anybody does, you're right. But I just hope that my military experience has set me up for success in the future, whatever I do. I know I'll probably go on to grad school. I want to become a licensed psychologist. And I think my military training, the discipline, I've got that discipline, so I can put my mind to something and I'll finish it. I'm not going to get halfway through something and stop it. And that goes in everyday life. Anything I do fully, and I try not to do things halfway.
That's a really good thing to have. I try and do that myself. I feel like everybody should try and get that discipline.
Definitely.
So, since the Navy and other military branches have high emphasis on respect, what do you think of like the current situation with players kneeling with the national anthem? I know it's a little controversial.
It is controversial, and I can see both sides of it. I don't quite understand why they're doing it, to be honest.
I don't either.
I don't understand. I see it as disrespectful. But at the same time, it could be considered like bowing down to the flag. So maybe in their mind, I guess I really don't understand the situation well enough to give an educated guess on it.
Yeah.
But I believe that when our flag is flying, when our national anthem is being played, you stand up, you put that hand over your heart, or if you were in the military, you stand at attention and you watch that flag during that national anthem, because we're one of the greatest nations in the world, and that flag, everybody recognizes it.
Yeah.
And that flag means a lot.
That's how I was raised, to always put your hand over your heart,
Mhm.
take your hats off.
Take your hats off.
Stand
with respect, because regardless of where we feel politically our country is going, or whether we support the military and what we're doing over in Afghanistan and Iraq, or whatever country we're in at the time, regardless of all that, we're still a country united, and we need to remain that way, because if we start falling apart, everybody else, our enemies, are going to see that, and they're going to be able to prey on that weakness and hurt us. And we don't need that. We are a great nation, and we need to stick together.
Yes, that's very important, because you see other countries like Syria who
Mhm.
are in a civil war, and people can prey on you very easily.
Mm-hmm. And Syria is a great example. It's devastating to me what's going on over in Syria. It really is. With all those refugees, and they have nowhere to go. It seems like no one that cares. I'm a firm believer that we should be a refugee state, that we should take in refugees when they need it. I know that current policies dictate otherwise. I don't necessarily agree with those policies. But that's, as an American citizen, that is my right. I don't have to agree with everything.
Yeah, that's one of the rights that you and others like you have fought for.
Exactly. I fought for that freedom of choice. Freedom to believe what we want to believe and speak out about it. So, yeah.
So, in your preliminary interview, you mentioned that you served in the FIOCGA.
FIAC, Georgia. Everything is an acronym in the military.
I tried looking that up, and
You're not going to find it.
Yeah.
It stands for Fleet Information Operations Command. It was the part of NIAC, Georgia, that deploys.
Okay.
So it's just another part of the same group, just with a different name. Fleet instead of Navy.
So that's just for deployments only, like,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense now. So when
Sorry, I should have been more clear about that.
It's okay. I found some of the other acronyms.
Did you?
so,
Good.
Yeah.
I forgot that. I was emailing someone who didn't have military experience.
It's totally okay. Why did you attend the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center in California? Was that just part of your job?
That was, to become a linguist, I had to pass the training. I had to go through, it was a 64-week intensive course in Arabic. Modern Standard Arabic, which is what's spoken like on the news and stuff. And then they have different dialects. There's like 27 or 29 different dialects of Arabic. So once you passed the MSA, or the Modern Standard Arabic, then you were trained in a dialect. Iraqi was, because it was prevalent at the time, Iraqi was the dialect I was trained in.
So did you get to decide to become a linguist, or was...
I did. I went into the Navy knowing that I wanted to be a linguist. I knew Spanish at the time, and I loved language and everything having to do with it. So when I went to the recruiters, I said, this is what I want to be. And it took 3 times of going to MEPS, which is the Military Entrance Processing Station. It took 3 times going down there to get for there to be a job opening in the job I wanted. But with my ASVAB scores, and then it's called what is it? Not DLPT. There's a test you have to take that says whether or not you qualify to be a linguist in the military. And I passed that, so we knew that I had all the qualifications. It was just a matter of waiting for nationwide for there to be a female linguist position in the Navy open up. So it took a couple times, but I finally got the position I wanted.
And so if you don't get a position that you want, are you just assigned?
You can be assigned, otherwise you go in as what's called a non-rater or a striker. And that just means that when you took your initial oath, you didn't have a job assigned. And most of them, after boot camp, will go out to a ship for, say, a year or a tour, which could be up to 3 years. And they'll do different jobs around the ship. And then they'll pick one of those jobs that has a job opening, and then that's where they'll be placed. So you can go in without a picked out job. It just kind of puts you in limbo. Not where I would want to be.
Don't think I could do that either. So besides obviously English, and you said you did
Modern Standard
Arabic. Do you speak any other language? Oh, and you mentioned
Spanish. Yep. At this point, I would say I don't speak any of them besides English. With language, just like with math, you have to practice it, and you have to be constantly using it to keep it. Otherwise, other things in your brain take over. So because I haven't been using it, it's kind of been lost. But I could say that if I were put into a situation, like say I were just thrown into Egypt, I could get by.
Oh, that's good.
It would come back fast enough where I could get by.
So, do you feel like learning a language such as Arabic, is it really hard? Because everybody's so used to learning Spanish and French.
It is hard. It's there's actually different categories of languages. There's 4 categories, and then you have English, which is a category all its own because it's so hard to learn. But there's Category 1 languages, which are a lot of your Romance languages, and you have Category 2, which would be Spanish, French, and German. And then you have your Category 3s, which are like Russian and Persian Farsi, which is what's spoken in Iran, Dari and Urdu, which are spoken in Afghanistan and Pakistan, respectively. And then you have your Category 4 languages, which are your Chinese and your Arabic, and I want to say Japanese used to anyways fall in that, and they could have been updated since I was in. And those are the hardest languages to learn. And at DLI, what they've done is Spanish and French and German are 6-month courses. So they're real fast-paced, and you get through them really quick. But they also use the normal Roman alphabet that we use in English, so you don't have to learn an all-new alphabet. Now with Farsi, Urdu, Dari, the Category 3, the Category 4 languages, you have to learn a whole new alphabet, a whole new way of spelling. With Arabic, you have to learn to write from right to left and read from right to left. Go from the back of the book to the front of the book. Well, to them it's not, but to us it would be. And so those are considered longer languages. I want to say Pashto, Persian Farsi were 40 weeks, 42 weeks, somewhere around there. And then you had Arabic and Chinese, which were Mandarin Chinese, which were 64 weeks because they're so intensive. But to put it into perspective, someone who goes to college and gets a bachelor's in Arabic language skills, or let's put a better perspective because that doesn't really qualify here, German. You know, they teach German here, and you learn enough to get by in 2 semesters, but you're not fluent in it by any means. With Arabic, in the first, we'll say semester, you learn as much in that first semester as you do the entire 2 semesters of learning that German or that Arabic taught in a school. My older sister actually took Arabic at the University of Minnesota, and what she learned in 1 semester, I learned in 3 weeks at DLI. So it is intense.
That's
That is your focus 8 hours a day and then 3-4 hours of studying at night. That is your whole focus. It's almost like a complete immersion.
It's like eat, breathe, sleep.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's how intense it was.
It just kind of blows my mind. Like,
yeah.
Wow. So obviously you've had to use Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
So have you had to use other languages when you translate or had to grab another translator?
Yeah, definitely. There'd be times I'd have to grab like a Persian Farsi linguist or an Urdu linguist. And I worked a mission where we worked with Somalia. And so we had native Somalians, I don't know if that's the proper noun usage, but we had native speakers of that language that helped us translate the Somali. But I had to learn how to determine this is Somali language, this is Arabic language, this is Persian Farsi language. So not only did I have to know my own language that I was a specialist in, I had to know how to recognize these different languages and sort them as such so that they would go to the proper chains to be translated.
How would you even start doing something like that?
When you do it for 12 hours a day, you just catch on. Each job that you're put into has a training regimen. So it's like 12 weeks and you have certain things you have to have checked off, and then there's an oral exam in front of a board, and then you get qualified as that job. And so I went through 4 of those different jobs when I was in the Navy. And all as a linguist, but just different shops is what we called them. And each one you had to learn, and for the Somali mission, you had to recognize a list of words in Somali, and you had to show that you could sort between the Somali and the Arabic. So there's a lot of training that goes into it. It's not like they just throw you in and boom, you're supposed to know it. It's, all right, we're going to train you on this. We're going to teach you how to do it. It's going to be intensive, but you're also doing it 12 hours a day. So you have a lot of immersion with it.
That's good that you have some immersion. That way you can tell.
Mm-hmm. And it was also required that we go through, as an Arabic linguist, I would have to go through an Arabic course once a week.
Mm-hmm.
Or not once a week, I'm sorry, once a year. And take what's called the DLPT, the Defense Language Proficiency Test. You had to take that once a year, and you had to pass it with what's called a 2+, the scoring system. 2+ is good, 1+ and below is bad. It goes from 0+ all the way up to, I want to say a 3+ or a 4, but I could be wrong on that. But so you had to take this test every year to show that you were still proficient in the language that you were working in. And if you weren't, then you had to go through more training.
I would hate to have to fail that test.
It wasn't fun.
Can only imagine.
I didn't pass it all the time.
So you had to go through all of, like, a bunch more courses.
It'd normally be a month of intensive training.
Okay, so it's not like another 64 weeks?
No. We're talking a month of what's called a refresher course.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you didn't pass, then there would be a 3-month, more intense refresher course. But there was a rule in place that it was called the 4 and you're out. Mm-hmm. You fail 4 times in a row, you're gone. You're not re-rated to a different job. You're gone. You're kicked out of the Navy. So it was imperative that you kept up your skills because the military has been downsizing. And this was one of their ways. Another way that they downsized, the Navy anyways, I don't know about the other branches, but another way they were downsizing was it was the same 4 and you're out, but it was for PT tests, for physical training tests. And we had to do physical training tests, PT tests, twice a year. So if you failed 4 in a row, you were kicked out of the Navy because you were no longer physically fit enough to stay in the Navy. If you failed once, then you would be put on what's called FEP, we called it fat person PT. Because it was most of us that were overweight or couldn't pass the PT test, but it was fitness enhancement plan. And it was intensive working out 5 days a week. at the gym, at the track, getting you up to standards, and then you had to pass all portions of the PT test before you could be taken off. I was actually on that from the time after I had my daughter till the time I got out. To be honest, it was like motherhood hit and I couldn't lose the weight.
Yeah.
But it was intensive because it was on top of working 12 hours a day. It was on top of doing shift work. It was on top of being a mother. It was on top of everything else. Plus I was an E6, which meant I was in a leadership role. And here I am put on this FET program, and I couldn't get off of it because I had a medical condition where my metabolism slowed down after I had my daughter. And just hormonal issues. And I gained weight. And it happens. It's part of human life. But it taught me, because now I'm going through a weight loss journey, I'll call it. And I know this is off topic. But I'm going through this weight loss journey right now, and if it weren't for the military putting that discipline in me, again, it goes back to that discipline, and teaching me the proper PT and nutritional skills, I wouldn't be able to be losing the weight I'm losing right now. So I'm kind of in a way thankful that I was put on that FET program because it showed me the proper ways to work out, which a lot of people don't get shown. Or people pay people to get shown. And I got it for free. It was like a personal trainer for free.
That's nice. I wish I had that.
I know, right?
You look great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you mentioned you were an E6,
Mhm.
and not being in the military, I'm not as familiar with the ranking system. So
You have E1 through E8, or E9, depending on how you look at it, on the enlisted side. The E stands for enlisted. As an E6, I was called a petty officer first class. In the Army, that would be a staff sergeant. The Marine Corps, that would be a staff sergeant. I think in the Air Force, that'd be a sergeant first class in the Air Force. But it's as high as you can go before you hit chief, which is when you start wearing a different uniform. So it's a decent level up there, enlisted side. And then you have the officer side, which works their own way. So yeah.
So, how do you move up in the Navy ranks, like, once you're in?
Well, as a linguist, we had a special program. When I was in what's called the delayed entry program because I joined at 17 and had to wait that year to go to boot camp.
Yeah.
So I had to go PT, I had to go check in monthly, that kind of stuff. So I had to get ready for boot camp basically for a year. And so during that, I went from E1 to E2 because I was in long enough. I passed a PT test, I passed a written exam, and I got bumped up to E2. Then I went to boot camp. From E2 to E3, it's a 6-month wait, I think. Might be a year-long wait. But there's a wait, and you automatically make A3. But then to get to petty officer level, normal jobs in the Navy, you had to take an exam for every level after E3. So E4 to E9, there's an exam that you have to take. For E7 and above, there's a board that they have to go in front of. And by passing, you get a score on this exam, and only so many people can advance based on how many, only so many E4s can advance based on how many E5s advanced.
Yeah.
So there's a very limited pool of people that can advance. Well, the way it worked when I was going through DLI, for an Arabic linguist, upon graduation from DLI, you automatically got bumped up to E4. You didn't have to take that E4 exam. But then every rank after that, you would have to take the exam and the board respectively. So I would take an exam, and how well you did that on that exam determined if you got promoted or not. And then depending on how many times you had to take the exam, because I had to take the E6 exam twice. The E5 I got right away. But you get what's called promotion points, where it kind of bumps you up against the people who maybe haven't taken the test before. So it's a very lengthy 3-4 hour long test that covers Navy knowledge and then job specific knowledge.
And so in between like E4 going into E5, there is a waiting period where you take the test.
Yeah, I can't remember what the waiting periods are, to be honest. I know from E5 to E6 it's 3 years. I want to say it's 2 years from E3 to, or from E4 to E5, but I could be wrong. But you have to be in that rank for so many years before you can take that exam to move up to the next rank.
Okay. So I was a little confused on that.
Did that clarify?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do you remember what your best day in the Navy was? Like, what you would consider the best day or the most exciting moment?
That's a hard one. Probably graduation from boot camp, to be honest. I'd been away from home for 8 weeks, 9 weeks. I'd never been away from home before. I got to see my parents because they came for graduation. I knew that the hardest part of my training was done. If I could make it through boot camp, I could make it through anything. So the pride in my parents, the pride in myself, I would say boot camp graduation was probably the best day of my entire career because it was such a big culmination of everything.
You worked so hard for so long, and then you made it. Like,
yeah.
You can.
There's, it's called Hell Week, or Hell Night.
I feel like I've heard of this from others.
The Marine Corps, it's Hell Week. It's an entire week. For the Navy, it's a night. It starts in the afternoon, and you go through all these different courses of things that you've learned throughout. You do firefighting, you do swimming, you do survival, you do a lot of running back and forth. It's different now. They don't have to do all the running back and forth. Disney actually went in and created the final battle stations is what it's called. They went in and created the final battle stations for Navy boot camp. Disney did.
That's pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool. But that was after my time there. But we probably ran a good 6-7 miles. And this was an all-night event. You were filthy, you were smelly, you were stinky by the time it was done. You wanted to just collapse. And it culminates in you going into this room. And the entire time at boot camp, you're wearing a hat that says recruit on it, which gives your status. Everybody knows that you're a recruit in training. Well, there's a ball cap exchanging ceremony that they do. At the end of this night, you're exhausted. Like, all you want to do is pass out. And you go in this room, and have you take off your recruit ball cap, and they put on this Navy ball cap, and it's official. You've passed boot camp. And that was just amazing. I mean, you're crying like a baby. And then there's a feast afterwards. You go in the chow hall, and you can eat as much as you want. You can drink as much as, not drink alcohol, but you can drink soda if you want to, because you haven't been allowed to this entire time. There's cake. I mean, it's a big deal. And then you know that in 2 or 3 days you get to see your family. And that's amazing, because you miss your family.
Just like transported me there, like they did not have that. I mean, it sounds so exciting.
It's something that, it's indescribable how you feel. It's just this huge sense of accomplishment. And it gets me teary-eyed thinking about it, because it's everything you've worked for so hard. You've been yelled at, you've been degraded, you've lost sleep, all this stuff, and you finally made it. Because that 9 weeks seems a heck of a lot longer than 9 weeks. Let me tell you. It's not 9 weeks when you're there. So.
I hate to transition from a good
No,
moment.
you're fine.
Do you remember your worst day in the Navy?
Probably when I got counseled.
What does that mean?
Counseled means there's 2 types of counseling. There's a good counseling and there's a bad counseling. And I had disobeyed a direct order and talked back to one of my superiors. I was just frustrated. I was lacking sleep. I had a new baby at home, and my child was sick, and I just wanted to go take care of my sick child. And they told me I couldn't go, and that my husband at the time had to go. Well, he couldn't get off work, and we didn't have anybody else, and he was in the Marine Corps. And so I just left. I left my post. So the next day, I had to get yelled at by my chief for like an hour about leaving my post, and I had to do extra duty because I had disobeyed. I didn't go to, I didn't have to go up to board or anything, but I still got reprimanded, and I've never felt lower than that, because nobody wants to be reprimanded. And for just wanting to take care of your own sick child, I mean, that's kind of harsh to be reprimanded for. But I did leave my post. I did leave work without permission, and I got in trouble for it. So I messed up, I paid the consequences, and life went on. But that was probably my lowest point.
I can only imagine just being yelled at by your superior like that. Just because
It's degrading. It makes you feel about that big.
And I feel like they should understand, because I'm sure some of them have kids too.
But orders are orders. You do what you're supposed to do.
So, how did you feel about some of your colleagues? I'm sure you probably didn't feel good about your superior after that, but...
I had the colleagues I loved, and then the colleagues I didn't love so much. There was a lot of bitterness between me and the girl in charge of me, because she made E6 after I did, and yet she got promoted to the position, and I got passed over for it, even though I had been in the shop 2 years longer than she had. So there was a lot of bitterness there. Didn't like her. She didn't like me. We didn't get along. They made sure to put us on opposite ends of the shifts, so we wouldn't have to be around each other, because we just couldn't be in the same room together. Not very professional, but, you know, people are people.
Yeah. So, do you still keep in touch with some of your colleagues?
Yeah, definitely. One of my good friends is stationed, actually two of my good friends are stationed at Fort Meade, which is near Washington, D.C. It's the NSA facility, NSA headquarters actually up there. And then there's people that, like, on Facebook that I'm still in touch with, but not that I really get together. Now most of my friends are civilians who don't have a military background, and I kind of like it that way, to be honest. It's nice to be able to immerse myself into civilian life and not have to worry about the military aspect of it. But I do still keep in touch with a couple of friends.
That's good. So, I've heard that the Navy is a little easier on women. So what was it like being in the Navy as a woman?
As a woman, it was a good experience. There were its ups and downs. It's still a very male-dominated world. You still have your people, or you did when I was in. You would still have your old crass men who thought that the military was no place for a woman, and you had to deal with that. But overall, it was a very positive experience. We were treated as equals, and because of my line of work, because of being a linguist, it was a lot more even male to female ratio than, say, infantry or, you know, boatswain mate or something like that. A job that's more male dominated. But it has its goods and its bads, definitely.
So, I'm not sure if you know a lot of people in other branches or not, but can you kind of clarify why people say that the Navy is easier on women?
The Marine Corps treats women as another man, in a way. They're held to the same standards, that kind of stuff. The Army, they deploy hand in hand with the men. Women still can't deploy forward. At least I don't think women can deploy forward. But when I was in, women weren't allowed on submarines.
Didn't they just pass something?
They just passed something where women are now allowed on submarines. Not sure how I feel about that one. I kind of believe that submarines are a male world and they should stay that way. But that's my own personal beliefs. But our standards are a little bit more lax than in the other branches. I would compare, the Navy and the Air Force are pretty similar when it comes to women in the military. The Army and the Marine Corps are kind of in fields of their own, I would say.
So, that kind of also helps explain how it was like compared to other branches in the military.
Yeah.
So, when did you leave the military?
June 28th of 2012. I will never forget that day.
What made you decide to leave?
My kids. It was time. If I had stayed in, I would have had to deploy. I had 2 young kids. My son was barely a year and a half, and my daughter, or actually no, my son was almost 2. My daughter was 3.5, I think, when I got out. But it was time. I just knew it was time. I was becoming bitter. I couldn't handle the shift work anymore. I had chronic migraines, so that interfered with work, got me in trouble because I would miss a lot of days. So I needed less stress in my life, and so I decided that it was time for me to get out. It was just, my time was up.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine having to leave 2 small kids and them not understanding.
Yeah.
That would break my heart.
That was the most terrifying thing to me, so I knew at that point, once I had kids and my priorities shifted from military to kids, that changed everything. So it changed my whole outlook on things.
So, you mentioned earlier that you went to another college besides USCA.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that college?
It was Georgia Military College in Augusta, Georgia. It's another liberal arts college. It's a 2-year program. And I graduated from there in May of, what year is it, 2016? May of 2016 with associate's degrees in social work and 1 in psychology.
So why did you decide to go there first?
Because I didn't want to jump right into university life. I knew just from talking to people that I needed to get my feet wet before I jumped into the big university setting. So I decided to go to community college, and the Georgia Military College just kind of fit my needs at the time. The schedules were right. It had the programs I wanted, and it was what I needed at that time.
That's really important. Going from straight from high school to college is a big experience.
I actually encourage people, if they're going to go straight to college after high school, either to take a year off and figure out what they want to do with their life before they go to college, or start off at a small 2-year college and then bump up to the university level. I know that's not really promoting the university, but from my experiences, it really set me up for success here at the university level.
So when you graduated, why did you decide to come to USCA?
Well, I looked at my options. It was this or Augusta University. Augusta University is a lot bigger campus. Honestly, the thought terrified me of going there. When I found USCA, it was a little bit more of a drive because I live in Evans, Georgia, so it's about a 40-minute drive for me one way. I put on a couple 100 miles on my car every week.
I live in North Augusta. I put on about 200.
You know the feeling then. But it was a liberal arts college. It had the degree I wanted. The reviews were good. And when I came here and kind of toured the campus and talked to people, talked to the VMSSC, the Veteran Military Success Center staff, I knew it was the right fit for me. So I applied.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So, said you were studying psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So, what made you decide to go in psychology compared to maybe sociology or somewhere else that's helping people? You said you. People.
I'm not a sociology person to begin with. I'm actually taking 3 sociology classes right now, and as much as I love the subject content, I don't do theories. Not the way sociologists do. I just don't think that way. Mm-hmm. I do have an associate's, like I said, in social work. The only reason I'm not going for social work right now is because I couldn't find a good program for social work. So I figured the next best step was psychology, because it gives me even more training than social work would do, and I can work in both fields. I just want to help people. I want to be that person that people can go to and talk to and feel comfortable about being around.
I think with psychology that would work very well in doing that. So
Yeah.
That was a great decision. Do you think people treat you differently because you were in the Navy?
I think some of the professors do, and it's not a bad thing. I feel like I might garner a little bit more respect than maybe some of the younger kids do. I definitely, like, people I study with, I can tell that they respect me, which is nice. It's a nice feeling to be respected. And that they kind of, I've had people tell me that they look up to me and what I did, and they think it's really, something to be admired for. And then you have those who don't care. It's just, you're just another student. You're just another number. Not that we're numbers here. We're not. But I've had a really good experience. The teachers that do know that I'm a veteran, because I don't just go out and say, hey, I'm a veteran, look at me. But those who do know treat me with respect, and kind of, if they're talking about something that they know I might have experience with, they'll kind of let me interject when I want to, which is kind of nice.
It's nice, and I do respect it. It is admirable that you did enlist and had the potential to risk your life for someone like me.
Something that my older sister once told me after I got out of boot camp, she's like, I don't know how you did it. I would not last a day in boot camp. I could not do it, and I respect you for it. And coming from my older sister, who I'm not as close with my older sister as I am with my younger sister, but coming from her, that meant a lot, because this is a person that I look up to and I respect and I admire. And for her to tell me that because I made it through boot camp, she respected and admired me, meant a lot. It was pretty cool to hear from her.
Respect anybody who can do boot camp. I don't think I could run 6 or 7 miles.
I don't think it's not for everybody. Not just anybody can go in. I couldn't do it. I could not go back to boot camp and do it all over again. No way, shape, or form. I couldn't do it again.
So has your transition from the Navy to USCA been a positive one, do you think?
It's had its ups and downs. Transition to civilian life has been interesting. It's not like you have someone leading your hand, taking you by the hand and saying, well, this is how we do things in the civilian world. It's, it's different from the military. I mean, I was in the military for 9 years. That's a huge portion. That's my entire adult life, pretty much. Up until I got out, that was my entire adult life. It's been a transition. It's had its ups and downs. I am rated at 100% disabled from the VA, so I still get that military aspect when I go to the doctor and stuff, which you wouldn't think you'd miss, but you do. It's the little things that you miss. So being able to talk to people who are in the military, and like the VMSSC here on campus is great. They're wonderful people there. They help with the transition. They understand where we're coming from, and they know they can kind of see our point of view when we're struggling, especially when it comes to civilian things, because there's still things even 5-6 years out of the Navy that I'm still relearning how to do in the civilian world.
That's great that you've had a positive experience. I know not everyone has.
Yeah, not everybody does. It's just, it depends on how you look at it. It really does.
So, how do you think that joining the Navy has affected you socially here? Like with your friends and other classmates?
I think I'm able to advise more than I would have if I weren't in the Navy. I've had people ask me just everyday life questions that I can answer. Not only because I'm an older student, I'm a non-traditional student, but because I did have that military experience. I've had, like the girl I helped study for class, she knows she can rely on me. And I'm not sure if I'd be as reliable if I hadn't been in the Navy, because, we had to rely on one another. So, yeah.
So, if you wouldn't have been in the Navy, do you think you would have been able to go to college otherwise?
I would have bucked it, honestly. One of the whole reasons I joined the Navy was so I wouldn't have to go to college. My parents were pushing me for it. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to put in applications. I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to go do whatever my parents said not to do. So me getting away from my parents, getting away from my family, getting in the military, it made me grow up. And then I was able to get out of the military and say, you know what? Now I'm ready to go to college. Now it's time. Whereas before, I don't think I would have succeeded in college if I had gone straight from high school. I admire those who do succeed at college who came straight from high school.
That's a big transition. I know because I came straight from high school
Yeah.
to college. But what do you want to do after you finish college?
That's a tough question. I know I want to do something in the psychology or social work field. I've thought of maybe working for DFACS, the Department of Family and Children's Services. I've thought about working for maybe the school system. I've also thought about working with people going and finding a job at the VA, because they've given so much to me. It'd be nice to be able to give back to what they've given to me. I mean, the doctors there are great. The volunteers that work at the VA are great. It's been a wonderful experience with that transition, with being disabled, that kind of stuff. I want to give back some way, somehow. I'm not quite sure yet how I'm going to succeed in that.
So, can you see yourself doing, where do you see yourself 15 years from now?
15 years from now, I see myself with a grad degree, kids out of school, because they'll be out of school in 15 years. That's really scary to think about. But I probably see myself back in Minnesota, to be honest. I miss my family. The only reason I've stayed in Georgia, or South Carolina, I guess we're in South Carolina, but I live in Georgia. But the only reason I've stayed here is for my children. I'm divorced, and in the divorce decree, me and my ex-husband have to stay within 50 miles of Augusta. So I'm stuck here till the kids turn 18. But I'd do anything for my kids. So I'm not going to leave my kids by any means. But I see myself in 15 years back in Minnesota, probably working in something with psychology or something like that.
That's good to always be close to your family. And
yeah, family is huge to me.
So you mentioned that you've had 2 children. They're probably not so small anymore. But would you be okay with them if they just came up to you and said, "Mom, I want to go into the Navy or another branch of the military"?
My son, who's 7, I think it'd be good for him, honestly. He's a little bit of a hellion. My daughter is a lot more soft. I don't think she could make it through boot camp at this point. Looking at her, and if she were to be at 18 how she is now, in 10 years how she is now, I don't see it happening. But if they came to me and said they wanted to join any branch of the service, I would support them, because that's what a parent does. It would be hard, because I know how hard it is in the military. I know deployments are rough. I mean, my ex-husband was a Marine. He deployed 3 different times. That was the hardest thing I think I've ever gone through, was a deployment, let alone 3. But I would support them, because that's what a mother does. She supports her children in anything that they want to do.
That's very good. I feel like my mom would do the same. She'd probably talk me out of it first.
I'd probably try to talk them out of it. I'm not going to say I wouldn't.
Are you sure you want to do this?
But I can't sit here and say, well, you can't join the military.
Yeah.
Because I was in the military. So I can't tell my daughter, you can't join the military. I can't do it. They would be hypocritical of me.
Yeah. I feel like it would be the same, because my parents are very patriotic, but at
Yeah.
the same time, they don't want me,
It's hard having a child leave home.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine it is.
And the potential risk if they
Yep.
do get deployed.
Yeah, exactly.
So, would you ever consider re-enlisting?
No. No. I couldn't with my disability status. Obviously, I couldn't. But even if I weren't disabled, I had the option to go in the reserves before I got my disability rating. No. That portion of my life, that chapter of my life is closed. And it's not going to be reopened.
So, would you recommend enlisting to anyone who talked to you about it and asked?
If they felt it was right for them, yes. It's not right for everybody. If you don't think you can make it through boot camp, it might not be the right decision for you. But I do encourage anybody to consider the military, especially high school students or college students who maybe college just doesn't feel right for you. I always encourage it as an option because we need good soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen. We need good people to serve in our armed forces, and we need to continue to promote the armed services as an option for kids, because we wouldn't be the greatest military on earth if we didn't have a reason to be.
That's good. I want to thank you for your time and thank you for serving.
Thanks.